Hey, I'm back with yet another 100-watt portable solar panel review. This time it's from a company called Kohree. It's Kohree, right there. And this is kind of a unique panel, something a little bit different that I haven't seen before. So let's find out if it's worth a look. Okay, so right out of the gate, you can tell by the color, this is just a different looking panel. It's got this kind of a nice gray look rather than the basic black you see on a lot of the other panels. But the differences don't stop there. They go far deeper than that. Now, like the Jackery, this thing is magnetic. So you can just kind of pull it aside and it snaps together. So it doesn't have any clasps to it other than the magnetic closer. So that's interesting. Now, what's very different than any of the other panels that I've looked at, other than just obviously the aesthetics of this panel, which I kind of like. It's got a aluminum alloy control strip on the side. And so what you have on this thing, and I'll show you more about this. In fact, I'll put a picture up here, but on the end of this thing right there is where the ports are, rather than in the bag. And there's some pros and cons to that I'll get into. But I think there's a pretty good solution for some of the one con, really, for that, and I'll share that with you as well. Also, this aluminum strip on the side has this kind of spring-loaded handle, which is also made of aluminum, not plastic. So it's kind of just something easy to get a grip onto when you're carrying it around when you're getting ready to unfold it. The pocket for the cables is completely waterproof, so that's nice, including the zipper. So you can just tell the material around it is totally waterproof and it's lined. Let's see what we get with the panel. So first of all, we get a set of tips here. There's actually 10 tips. I've got one actually on one of the panel cables now, which I'll show you. So this is the 5.5 millimeter cable that it comes with, and it actually plugs into the side on that little rubber strip. And then this is where you add your adapter tips from this little set here to fit whatever it is that you have. Now, it doesn't have an aviation style connector, but it does have another style of connector that is in the pocket here, and it's got an XT60 connector right there, and I'll put a close-up of that. I think there are only probably a few portable power stations on the market that use the XT60 style of connector, but if you happen to have one, this fits it right directly without any other adapters. So that's all that's really in the bag here, except for some carabiners. They do give you 4 of these carabiners, and it does have metal grommets. So if you wanted to mount this on something, rather than use the leg stands, they've got you covered. They're metal grommets, and they include the carabiners already. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, so other than an aviation style connector here, that's probably the one big omission. But the price point on this panel is really quite good. So I'm going to share that with you in a little bit after you get a chance to go outside and see how this thing performs. So let's jump out and do that. All right, we've got some pretty decent sun. Let me just kind of show you what we're dealing with here. This is late afternoon, some wispy clouds, so it's not 100% clear, but close enough to get a pretty good realistic sort of normal sunny day kind of conditions. So we are going to take this Kohree 100-watt panel and set it up and see what kind of watts we get out of it. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the Jackery Solar Saga 100 and just do a comparison so we can kind of get a feel for the typical output for the same conditions between the Kohree 100 and the Solar Saga 100 from Jackery. So let's go check that out. All right, so I've got the Kohree 100 right here on the right, got the Jackery 1000 in the middle, and then I've got the Solar Saga 100 on the left of the Jackery. You can kind of see they have a similar surface area, right? They're both 100-watt panels. This also has the ETFE coating, that real ruggedized ETFE coating that the Jackery has. So you can see I've got the DC cable for the Kohree that's coming from the side, and this is also where the Type C and the Type A connectors are. So there's a separate DC cable that's got like a 5.5 millimeter on it, and then there's an adapter cable right here, or an adapter for the 8 millimeter that goes into the Jackery. So we just take a quick look here. You can see I'm getting 73 watts on the Jackery, 73, 74 watts, a little fluctuation, pretty typical. Now I'm kind of curious. I'm going to stay right in the middle with my shadow so I'm not interfering with either one. Let's put the Solar Saga 100 in and see what we're getting there. Okay, so we're getting 92 watts, so 90 to 93 watts. So it's a pretty significant, and I will say that my Solar Saga 100 is consistently a pretty efficient high performer in terms of output. Now there's a significant cost difference too, so I guess we'll have to look at it from a cost per watt rather than total output, because the Jackery is definitely much more expensive. Now this one actually has a native XT connector in the pocket bag in the back. So this is only if you are not using the XT60 connector. I'm not sure if I said that. So standard DC output for most of your portable power stations will go out into the side. And there's a rubber cover here that keeps these closed when you're not using it. But of course, if you're having to use it here, then these ports are actually not in a bag and they're exposed to the elements. So you definitely wouldn't want to use this in the rain at all if you have to use the side DC port. One thing I want to point out too is I really like on this the fact that I can actually make this a lot shallower. Right, so there's a little buckle thing. This is what I wished I'd seen on some of the other ones. The Jackery doesn't really do that. It is pretty stable the way it is. You could lift up these feet this way, right, and make it a little steeper angle. But as the sun gets higher, you want this to lay back further. And you really can't do that on the Jackery without just laying it down or propping it on something. But you can do it on this one. So, you know, I might be, the sun is fairly low in the sky, so it's probably not going to give me any advantage to do that, but I can slide these little buckles in and create more slack, allowing me to pull these legs out further and drop the panel to a steeper angle. I like having that flexibility there. My only big concern really, as I said, is these open ports. All right, now from an ease of deployment and pack it up standpoint, the Kohree I think is right on par with the Jackery. That is one of the things I really like about the Jackery. The two-panel design, I mean, despite its high cost, and that is really the one thing that I really don't like about the Jackery, but the Kohree is equally easy to deploy. So it's just that two-panel design, two legs, and they're fully adjustable as you saw. So it's really easy to pack up and put away, just like the Jackery Solar Saga 100 is. So it's another pro in the Kohree column. Also, I happen to just like that gray look for some reason. I know that's not worth anything from a functionality standpoint, but I do like the gray look over everybody else's just basic black. All right, so let's talk about kind of the pros and cons of this particular panel. So first of all, I really do like the unique design. Now this does have both a Type A quick charge 3.0 and a Type C PD 45 watt. So 45 watts of power delivery out of that Type C port. So obviously you can charge mobile devices that support power delivery. But if you also happen to have a power station that supports dual channel charging, like my Opus 600 does, it has a PD 60 watt input, so I can actually charge it through the PD port. And there are quite a few newer power stations on the market now that do that. And if you have one of those, you can actually sort of get bonus watts. I've talked about this in some of my other videos, but even if you're having just a single panel, so for example today, and I'll put a video up where I tested this, I took my Opus 600 out and it was fairly cloudy conditions, but I did have a little bit of sun, and I was getting roughly 50 watts of power out of the main DC out on this panel. And then I plugged in the Type C port into the PD input port on my Opus 600, and I was suddenly getting about 85 watts. So I got a pretty significant bump, somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 watts of additional power out of that PD port. Now you're not always going to be able to do that under every condition, but it definitely does work on those dual channel charging style of power stations. So that's another way to actually get some pretty decent wattage, sort of bonus wattage into to fast charge your power station if that's an option for you. Now this is a monocrystalline cell, and I think I showed that in the other clips before. It has that same ETFE pebbled style coating that the Jackery uses that I really like. It's very rugged, and it is IP65 water resistant. It's going to handle most types of rainfall. Now, is it going to handle being submerged? No. I think we all know by now that you can't submerge these, but if you have this, if you're able to keep this side strip covered, with this rubber gasket that it's got here, this thing is about as water resistant as you're going to get in a portable solar panel, because this bag is completely water resistant, and there are no ports inside there that are going to be easily wet if this thing gets rained on. So this thing should be able to handle rain, no problem, but definitely not submerging. As I mentioned before, if you want to use the XT60 cable that's integrated inside the bag, and you need it to go to something else where you can use those adapter tips, you can buy an XT60 male to a DC 5521 male. And I'll put a link to one of those in the description below if you want to check it out. They're only like maybe $11. They're not very expensive. And that would allow you to charge the thing without using these this little side port panel here, even if you don't happen to have a native XT60 input port on your power station. Now, from an output standpoint, as I showed in the video, this thing produces about 20% less wattage under the same conditions as the Jackery Solar Saga 100, but it's also 50% cheaper, or nearly 50% cheaper than the Solar Saga 100. So this thing comes in at about $160, whereas the Solar Saga is nearly $300. So when you look at it from a cost per watt standpoint, under the conditions that I was getting in the video, the Jackery is costing me about $3.21 per watt of output, and the Kohree is giving me about $2.16 per watt in terms of cost. So it's about 1/3 cheaper in terms of cost per watt than the Solar Saga, if you want to look at it that way. So it really comes down to priorities. If cost is not really a concern to you, then you're going to get more output from the Jackery, but you're going to pay a significant premium to do that. This thing will give you a little bit less output, but it's significantly less expensive. So honestly, I would probably buy 2 of these over the Jackery, and only spend just a few bucks more to have 2 of these than the single 100 watt from Jackery. And the reason for that is because this thing is just as easy to deploy. It is more flexible with the legs than the Jackery, so I can lay it flatter for better alignment when the sun is very high in the sky. And frankly, I just kind of like the looks of this thing. And I like the option of not having to dig into the cable bag if I do want to charge from the side. I don't do that very often, but when I do, it's kind of annoying to not be able to see where the ports are and kind of get behind the thing. So I just do like the convenience of this thing. It's also very packable. It's very thin. And yeah, I just think that's a really good alternative to the Jackery Solar Saga 100, even though I do like the Jackery a lot. Just wish it weren't so expensive. So anyway, that's all I've got for you on this panel. I just think it's a really great choice if you're in the market for a 100 watt panel. And if you've got other panel ideas or things that you've come across, feel free to share those in the comments below. I mean, other viewers, I'm sure, would like to see what other options might be out there, and leave your experiences with those, and so we can all kind of share that with the with the community. If you have any questions about this panel, please leave them in the comments below. I do try to read all the comments, and I will absolutely try to answer your question if I can. And thanks for sticking with me. I do have some cool stuff coming up. I've got a really cool power station solar panel combo that I think is pretty compelling, actually. I'm really excited about it. So that'll be out in just a couple of days, so be looking for that. And anyway, that's all I got for you. I will hope to see you in the next one. Until then, have fun out there.